It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I am Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, I'm very excited to watch this back because normally there's like 1 second where we're on the screen before it plays the intro. I looked up and it was at like 4 seconds before I think that it started playing the intro, and your head was go. So like I'm just excited to see what the comments look like and how it plays back. But anyways, how we doing?
I'm doing good. You know, I've been in a crabby mood all day, but the music hits. I don't know. I'm just in a better place. So
I'm ready to go. Flip on the day. It's like a brand new day when this starts.
It is.
I recently saw a TikTok about some guy doing so. I don't know if you saw this, not related at all to what we were talking about, but he like breaks his days up, and he was saying basically he fits 3 normal people's days into one day by doing them in like 6-hour increments or something like that. And I'm just thinking that's kind of how this is now. Like you had a day already. This is the start of a new day once we hear the song with Brandon Rossi's voice.
Yeah, there you go.
The big news of the day, Alan, we got another defensive lineman signing off the market. I know all other 31 teams are super upset that they missed out on this guy. And to be honest, you said his name right before we started recording. I'm going to let you go ahead and repeat it.
No, I want you to try. I want your best effort here.
All right. So at Essaze Otomuwe is what I'm going with.
It's Asazi Otomowo. Asazi Otomowo. So the emphasis is on the second syllable in both words. Asazi Otomowo.
Okay, I think I'll have that down by the time that he's no longer a Steeler. But anyway, added for some defensive line depth, I would assume for, the summer here. We'll see if he can impress in camp or whatever. But
he spent most of the last 2 seasons on the Jacksonville practice squad. Played 4 games last year. Started 2. It's always like funny, like just watch, like, man, like I hate to get on my soapbox again, but like, what happens in games that don't matter to either team or to one team are like so foreign to the experience of covering the Pittsburgh Steelers that like you forget that there's like whole swaths of games from last year. Swaths, why I said that weird, from games last year where like this team is just like, yeah, we don't really care. We're just playing literally anybody. Let's just get through this. It doesn't matter. Let's call up this random guy from the practice squad and start him twice. And it's like the Steelers haven't done that in your lifetime, basically.
Right.
It's just so bizarre that like that is it. Like I have to remind people that like there is another world out there where like, yeah, strange stuff like Asazi Otomowo starting 2 games for your team can happen.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to him. I'm not like I know that this is kind of like come off as a joke from me at the beginning here. It's just there are very few times where a player gets signed and I genuinely have no idea who they are if they've started football games, and we got a case right here. And maybe it's just me being too much of a casual here. Had never heard of this guy prior to today, and he started 2 games for the Jaguars last year. So
there's lots of guys who started 2 games for the Jaguars last year that nobody's ever heard of. I mean, I think that's the point, because they were bad and like I think kind of trying to be worse even.
Yeah. From what I understand, when the Steelers called about Trevor Lawrence, they asked about this guy hitting the market, and they were so impressed with the feedback they had to get him. So didn't get Trevor Lawrence, but this is some defensive line depth. We'll see what happens here in terms of how he goes throughout the summer and if he can impress. But other than that,
some other people that started on the Jacksonville defensive line last year, Jeremiah Ledbetter, Roy Roberts Harris, someone named Miles Cole. Yeah, I don't know. Like this is just like the world in which bad football teams live that the Steelers don't. Sometimes it's illustrative to see how the other side leaves. So Otomowo, who right now I would put about 10th on the Steelers defensive line depth chart, assuming they're going to draft one in the first round. and probably is not going to make the team. Started 2 games for the Jags last year.
Yeah, you just brought this in my mind. This wasn't something that this is to be a very question-based podcast, by the way, coming from the YouTube community. But something you just put in my mind with that, we haven't seen like offensive line depth really added to this team yet.
Yeah.
See, does that surprise? Because I was kind of expecting like somebody at this point, whether like not even a guy that can necessarily start.
How about signed this morning, Fred Johnson, former Steelers? Was he a draft pick or a UDFA? He was a UDFA. Steelers signed him and then won a Super Bowl with the Eagles last year. And I thought like that would be a good. So I don't know. Maybe it's some faith in Dylan Cook, which is weird because I know that they like Dylan Cook, and then like they did a bunch of things last year. Like they caught him in the middle of the season. I was like, do they not like him anymore? I kind of thought they were grooming him for this job. If you'd asked me in 23, I thought, Dan Moore will leave. The two, Broderick Jones will start. Dylan Cook will take over as a swing tackle. But like I don't know. After last year, but I'm a little surprised they haven't made a signing at tackle for a swing backup. That's really the only place. I put like a little spreadsheet together of like where the holes are on the roster. I think Omar's done a pretty nice job, man. There's not too many left. I mean, obviously, starting quarterback is a relatively major one, but outside of that, maybe one more wide receiver, maybe one more corner, a swing tackle, another running back. Maybe like I don't know. You get to like the third day on your draft sim, and it's like still don't really need any of this. Just kind of pick from whatever. Like maybe a tight end. I don't know. Like they're in pretty good shape.
Just brought in Juan Thornhill to check the safety box, which is one that I would have said.
Exactly. Filled linebacker early. I guess they need a 4th edge rusher. Like I feel like that'll probably be a vet. Somebody actually mentioned the other day.
You feel like Malik Harrison could fill that role though as well, or no?
He's done a little bit of it. The Steelers have been very hesitant to do that. They flat out said no to the idea of Peyton Wilson doing that last year, which is very like when you ask Mike Tomlin like a strategy question, like will you put this player in this situation? He'll be like, I don't know. I guess we'll see. And someone was like, will you play Peyton Wilson at outside linebacker? And he was like, no. So like, I don't know. They don't really seem to be the team that does that, but maybe he could. Maybe they'll use DeMarvin Leal in that role. He's done it before. Which talks about how deep the defensive line group is. Maybe it's a move back to edge. Poor Marv. I feel like he's like he's just been yo-yoed throughout his entire career. Then he had a neck injury last year.
I kind of forgot about him because of the injury last year, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like anytime I see his name or hear his name, I'm like, oh yeah, he's still here as of right now. So
or maybe they'll flip him, trade him to a 4-3 team where I think he's a better fit. Maybe they'll cut Dean Lowry. They can save some cap doing that if they feel like they need it. Although right now it doesn't look like they're gonna. So
yeah. I was just thinking about the offensive line when we were talking about defensive line. I was like, okay, I mean, we lost Daniels, Herbig, Dan Moore Jr., obviously, and those were like, starting caliber players. We had guys that were ready to jump into those roles, but like that obviously depletes the depth from a group that like going into last year, into the summer, we were like, this is as deep of a group as they have on the roster, like 10 deep on the offensive line. So I just think it's a hard turnaround, at least as we stand here right now with the roster from where we were last year with that group.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll see how they address it. Anyways, going back to the defensive line thing, though, because it's a question that we got from Tim Brown. It's interesting because it's like such a simple, I feel like, question, but it could be a very in-depth answer in terms of why this happened. Tim just point blank asked, how come we got thrashed by Baltimore for 300 yards on the ground? What in the world happened?
Oh, man, I got to take like a whole Morning Rush episode to really answer this question. But like what really happened was the Steelers got away from their own game plan against the Ravens. They tried to change up and they left it hanging over the middle, basically. Is that they said, we've always done this against the Ravens. It has always worked. But in the first game against the Ravens, even though they won the game, it didn't really work. I mean, Derrick Henry still had a good game, right? So like it was only kind of working. And then so the Steelers were like, well,
had a lot of touches.
Yeah, okay, but he had 5 yards of carry in that first game. So that's not what you want. So they tried something different and it just brutally backfired. Is the short answer to that question.
Yeah, I want the long version on Steelers Morning Rush, so we can save it for them. But I think what you're going to see is, again, we've talked about right now, if the draft were to take place, where we think that their interest is going to be. I know people may be a little bit uninspired by the way that they've attacked defensive tackle through free agency to this point. But again, that what they're looking for still very much out there, not only a vet in terms of the defensive tackle group that is still out there, say Calais Campbell, if they were to bring him in, but also in the draft. This is the year to need defensive line help, and I think the Steelers are going to attack that early and also often.
And with, like I said, like with the holes getting filled, it's easy to see them going to D-line twice in the draft. Like, honestly, when I look at I look at the board, I'm like, oh, there's so many good ones. So yeah, I mean, I think that's very possible.
We got another question from Steven and another $5 from Steven.
Did I take this one this morning? I think I took this one this morning.
Oh, did you? Is it about it is. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
this one this
there goes that. So here's the thing. Even if I listen to Morning Rush, the title, should Steelers draft a CB in round 1? I didn't know you parlayed that specifically off of Brandon Echols' question. So that's on me. That's my fault there for not knowing that there. Anyways, okay, let's stick with the secondary though. Infinity 2Z3R07 says, while we're talking secondary, do you think it's a given that Minkah will see the final 2 years of his contract? Does the lack of recent production make him untradeable? All basically to say, Nick Emmanwori screams Tomlin draft crush to me. Gerald Alexander talked to him at South Carolina Pro Day. Is that idea crazy? I did find it very interesting, that Gerald Alexander was there talking to Nick at South Carolina's Pro Day. Obviously, like a first round player to me, especially in this draft class, amongst the safety group. So what do we make of the interest there? And could it mean Minkah's Steelers tenure ending sooner than we might think?
See, my read on Emmanwori is that he's a really fast box safety and not a big free safety. I understand that, like, I'm splitting hairs there, but like, I would not look at him in the Steelers defense as a Minkah replacement. I feel like it's a waste if you have that guy playing center field. Like, you want him close to the line of scrimmage wreaking havoc. Like, to me, that's a Deshon Elliot replacement, if anything. And I don't really see that happening. So, like, I don't know. I'll admit that, like, them sending Gerald Alexander definitely raised my eyebrows and maybe has caused me to rethink my stance there. But, like, yeah, I mean, even if you drafted that guy, you would not be getting rid of Minkah Fitzpatrick. You would just be playing both of them. And, like, sorry, Juan Thornhill, you signed here for nothing.
Well, I was just say that's basically what the question boiled down to. I know was the Minkah aspect of that, but I was going to ask, say you do draft that player, what is the fit here? Do we see, that question you just took about Brandon Echols was about slot corner? Could it be more Minkah or more Deshon Elliot in that respect? Do you think Emmanwori is a player that could contribute in that regard? Like, what would it mean the fit would be, say they were to take that player?
It's tough. I don't think they've ever had a player like him. Like, Polamalu is like I'm not saying he's that good, but like in terms of like deployment style, okay, like that's how I think the Steelers would use him. And so that's why I think like probably like kind of biting more from Deshon Elliot than you would Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's kind of how I feel about him. He's a really good player. I don't think he's as good as Polamalu, like, obviously, but like
right.
I think he's a really good player, and that style of like you can put him close to the line because he has a recovery speed to still get back. He's a hard hitter, can run forward. Like, I think he's a good player. I don't know. I don't really see the fit, to be honest. Now, like, the question about Minkah playing out the contract, obviously he's going to play this year. But like, look, he didn't have a great year last year. He's due in cash $17.6 million in 26. None of it's guaranteed, and will probably be looking for a new contract at only 30 years old at that point. Like, if he has another year just like last year, and you're going into next offseason with a $17.6 million bill coming due and the player asking about an extension, where are you with that? Because I'm not really sure.
I agree. I think it's one of those tough calls that needs to be made. I guess my question is, I feel better about I feel like Omar would be willing to cut ties there. I guess the question for me would be about Tomlin and Rooney. Like I think that could be one of those conversations where we might see the organization on different pages at different levels.
Yeah. And obviously we're talking about like what I feel like is near the worst case scenario. Like I don't think he's going to be worse.
Yeah, right.
So like if he goes out there and like has another normal Minkah year, then it's no big deal. But like I do think it's something to think about. That's one of the reasons why I'm a little surprised they signed Thornhill, because I thought they might want to go draft a safety this year with the idea that you give him a year and then maybe he plays well as a third safety and you're like, this guy can be a future starter. Maybe we'll trade Minkah instead of
who would be that player in this class? Because I know you said like the interest in Emmanwori kind of raised eyebrows from that perspective, but you also don't believe he would be a Minkah replacement. Who could they take that would make you think, oh, like
Xavier Watts from Notre Dame?
Yeah. Yep.
Like that's the one that like immediately jumps to my mind.
Do you see any potential for Jahdae Barron to maybe be of like a Brian Branch type where he could do like that stuff too, where it was like he got brought in to play nickel, but then like was also playing safety, and like him and Kirby Joseph obviously became a really good duo on the back end this past year?
I guess I haven't seen him do it. Those are hard projections to make.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who is safety that like I really like that's really underrated is Jalen Reed from Penn State. Guy has like serious skills. He's like down in the 130s on mock draft database. He's a really good player. I like him a lot.
So this was before the Steelers traded their second round pick, because I think it would get more interesting. And I'm not saying they can't do it, but we did a mock draft, like a pre free agency one, and I picked him with the Steelers' 4th round pick.
Okay.
And I'd be okay with that. I think that again, if you're doing that, how are you checking the rest of the boxes? I think it would be my question. If you're taking a safety in the 4th round without a 2nd round.
Well, that was kind of the point of this morning. Is like, how many boxes do you feel like absolutely have to be checked?
Yeah. Defensive line, at least I get the double dipping maybe doesn't need to happen. Like,
yeah, at least one.
It happen, but obviously it has to happen once. I think they need a running back in the draft
for sure.
Obviously quarterback doesn't have to happen. For me, that's like if the value lines up, I would do it. I still think they need a receiver, but like again, they have 6 right now on the roster. Like whether you feel like it's a quality room, they have 6 right now.
And there's a lot of free agents out there too. Still, also,
sure, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Offensive line right now, again, that could be, guys that they maybe add depth pieces through free agency. But yeah, I guess to me, you could sell me on pretty much anything, I think, besides like off-ball linebacker.
I think as long as you come out of the first 3 rounds with at least a 1 defensive tackle and 1 running back, you can kind of talk me into almost anything else.
Yeah. So I don't. I guess
you can wait on running back if you want to. If you want to let it ride. Like there's definitely guys down the list. So
yeah, like how different is a back gonna be that you get in round 3 as opposed to like
the difference between Quinshon Judkins and Damian Martinez is not that big. And you're talking about players like mocked at like 50 and 150. Like with a whole bunch in between.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, is Judkins better? Yeah, absolutely. Is he that much better? I think not really.
Yeah. And obviously like Fitz a big part of that too. But I don't know. We'll see. That not having the 2nd round pick, I think, kind of changed the formula for me, but we'll see if they can recoup a pick. And that's kind of where I want to go with the question now. Devin said, "Thank you for all you do, Alan. Always providing quality content. You and the Steelers Now team constantly checking, reading online. The #1 source for Steelers news. I'm the one that updates my family with the Steelers news using the good content that I get from you guys. Appreciate that." Devin says, "Was wondering what is a good trade back package if the Steelers were to move back in the first, say to like the 28 to 32 range. What do you think they would be receiving back to do so? Something like a 3rd this year, 2nd next year. How do you think that would work? And maybe would it be in the hopes of getting an Arch Manning type next year and trade a haul of picks to get there?
Yeah, there are a bunch of different ways you can calculate the approximate value. The Fitzgerald Spielberger trade value chart over the cap is a good one. The Rich Hill one at Draft Tech is a good one. They're very different. You can find whatever answer you want to find on the Fitzgerald Spielberger one. If the Steelers trade from 21 to say 28, that nets them 146 points. So that's really not that much. That's only a late round pick. I think they're worth more than that. It's always like the thing that all of those charts leave out is that it's all about the market, and what is available to be drafted drives the market. If Shedeur Sanders is there at 21, if Will Johnson is there at 21, if Ashton Genty is there at 21, that Steelers pick will be worth triple if if it's just Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan, and Emeka Egbuka, or maybe not even, so it's just all about where people are expecting other people to go. And then that in turn impacts the perceived value. If I'm the Steelers and I'm trading down more than 2 or 3 picks, I better be getting a day 2 pick for it. If they're not doing that, it's probably not worth it.
And I think hard to sell me on that pick being in 26, right? I mean, I get what he's saying because of like, because I understand the idea of like it being around earlier.
26 pick, but then I would just flip one of the 26 picks to get back into.
Okay, that's fair. That's that makes sense. Yeah. See, that's where I'm at.
Want to trade back just to add more resources to 26.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to do that.
That's fair. Yeah. So if they can do that, then sure, I could get on board with that. My thinking with saying that was you're moving out of like 25 without getting back into 20, like having less picks, basically moving back in 25 without having another pick added to the 25 capital. So what you're saying certainly would make sense for them to do so. The other part there about Arch Manning, I mean, certainly sounds like it's possible he doesn't come out until 27. I mean, they're kind of making it seem like internally, like the family would like for him to play at Texas until 27 and not come out early like that. So we'll see on that, but who knows? There's still a bunch of intriguing names in that quarterback class for 26 that stands right now. We know guys are going to either, rise or fall throughout the season next year, but it certainly on paper looks like a more promising quarterback class than we're seeing come out this year.
Oh, it looks like a great quarterback class next year. I can't imagine anybody not liking next year's quarterback class. I know Arch Manning may not be in it, but like Aller, Yamaleva, Nussmeier, and then there's a whole bunch of guys that are like high profile guys that are kind of just on the cusp of moving up into that group. I think it's a good quarterback class.
I will be dialed into Clemson football this upcoming season.
Klubnik, you're a fan?
That's my guy right now. Yep. That's my guy right as we sit here right now. That could change, but that's the guy that I
like the idea of Nussmeier. His dad's a coach for the Saints. He went with Kellen Moore from the Eagles to the Saints, right? I like that. I thought he had a tough year, but I like the tools. There's like a whole bunch of guys though. Like it's not top heavy either, even though it is good at the top. Hunter Wegman from Texas A&M was a player that I really liked coming into last year. Didn't necessarily have a good enough year to come out, but I think it's still a good draft prospect. It's a good class. It's worth waiting for. I think that's pretty certain.
I'm surprised that this name does not get brought up more in our comments because of how much people have voiced their displeasure for Mike Tomlin recently. But that one boy 236 said, "Love the show. Hope you guys see this question." We did. It's just for fun. But do y'all think Dino Tomlin would be picked up to be a camp body? And how do you think fans would take it? Again, love the show. Listen to y'all. And Chris Carter, first thing at work every morning. It's always got to include Chris Carter. We appreciate it, but
yeah, I mean, we'll let him have that, I guess. Dino Tomlin had 3 catches last year for Boston College as a 60-year senior. I like Dino. Yeah. That's not going to get anybody an NFL job.
Yes.
I mean, like rookie minicamp tryout, sure, that cost them nothing. Like that's reasonable. They let Phil Dracovic try out a tight end last year. Like those spots are not precious. So like, sure, why not? But like beyond that, I would be kind of surprised. And I think the fan reaction would be justifiably upset. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like I see jokes about it happening all the time, and I kind of just like brush them off because I assume it's not going to happen. If it were to actually happen, then yeah, we have an issue here to discuss.
Rookie minicamp.
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
I mean,
they can do whatever they can bring me in to rookie minicamp if they want.
Yeah, they've had lots of other. Wolf's nephew was there a couple of years ago. Like they've had lots of those sort of favor, and also like a lot of times what happens is so there's rookie mini camps in 2 consecutive weeks, and so like a lot of times they'll want somebody who's at another one, so they'll leave a spot open, and then maybe the guy thinks he did a good enough job that he doesn't have to go to another one, or he actually does sign with that other team. The Steelers are always the second week, so like they'll be waiting to see if a guy who went to the Giants rookie minicamp will then come to theirs afterwards. And then when they have that spot open at the last second, they're always like looking for somebody local to be like, "Hey, Duquesne, you got anybody? We need a wide receiver over here." Like, so absolutely, I can see something like that happening.
Alan, I want to close out talking about Aaron Rodgers because why not?
Yeah, I have an Aaron Rodgers thought that I would like to share, so that's good.
Okay, so do I. And again, this isn't from the perspective of the franchise. I understand why the franchise is operating the way that they are with Aaron Rodgers, but this is just kind of my perspective on it. I quoted Andrew Filipponi, 93.7 The Fan, put out a tweet regarding Mike Florio being on their show about Aaron Rodgers to Minnesota not being dead. Rodgers could wait and see how J.J. McCarthy looks in the Vikings offseason program, dragging it out longer, and he still wants to be a Viking. Now, is that actually the case? I don't know what Aaron Rodgers internally is thinking, but this is just my position on that thought, assuming that that is true. I don't have an issue with waiting on Aaron Rodgers. If he's deciding between, or I wouldn't have any issue, I should say, if it was just deciding between retirement and the Steelers. I think my issue becomes if it's clear that like the Steelers aren't amongst his top options, if he's just settling for them to continue playing football. I just don't have the desire to wait around on that personally as a fan. I understand the organization may not think that way. That's just kind of the way that I see it. And I would wonder how the locker room would react as well, knowing, hey, we were this guy's third, fourth option, whatever it might be.
I don't get that sense. I think actually Rodgers would prefer to play for the Steelers, but they aren't offering what he wants to play for. Hence the situation. The Vikings are a better team, so I understand the idea. If he could be like, hey, if I could start for them, that'd be cool. I mean, like, I'm sure he'd love to start for the 49ers too, but like, that's not happening. Like, so I get it, but like, I don't think that's ever been very realistic. Never have.
Yeah. That's just, and again, I'm not saying the organization should operate that way. Like, oh, if we're not your top option, F off. Like, I understand they're not going about business that way. It's just, as a fan of the Steelers, if somebody's preference wouldn't be to play for the Steelers and we're only a fallback option, last case, worst case scenario, last resort, however you want to put it, I don't necessarily have the desire to have that player play for the organization.
Yeah, I think this is just contract negotiations.
And that's fine. Yeah, then in that case, I get it. This is just a hypothetical, assuming that there was some truth to that, because I understand from an organization operating the way that they are. I've kind of been going back and forth with people about this. Like, if the same people that are saying they're fine with Mason Rudolph starting games are disagreeing with the way that they're going about this, if you feel like you're comfortable enough with Mason Rudolph to start games, why does it matter how long that this goes?
Right.
Like, why?
Yeah.
Like,
if you're saying like, forget it, just start Mason, then, well, if you're okay with starting Mason, then why not wait? Why not wait for Rodgers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you, and then, the response, something about like, you got to know how much money you're allocating. Are you dropping 25 million plus on Aaron Rodgers or what? They haven't done a single restructure. Like, they have a bunch of money they could make right now, and they're not operating differently through free agency because of Aaron Rodgers. I think it's, going back to what we've talked about recently with just like they're looking to 2026 and, being very selective with the free agency how they go about it because of the comp formula. I think that's what it boils down to, more than them just sitting on a bunch of cash hoping Aaron Rodgers comes to town.
Yeah. And they did spend a lot of money. Spent 30 million a year.
People aren't even including him within this offseason, it seems like. He just magically got dropped on the roster.
Add up a couple 5s and 4s and 8s in there, and you get a lot of money real fast. My thought about Aaron Rodgers is this.
Yeah.
I think I've talked a lot about the idea of Aaron Rodgers sort of deciding between like not playing football and playing for the Steelers, and I feel like those are in some level options 1A and 1B. But the idea of him just not wanting to go to OTAs and minicamp and like wanting to decide in the summer is like an interesting third idea here, where like, remember last year it was all this huge news that he didn't want to go to OTAs, or he didn't go to skip mandatory minicamp. It's not mandatory if you're not under contract until July 1st. I don't know. Like, I could see that being an attractive option for him, because the thing that happens is it allows something else to happen. It allows someone else to get hurt or whatever and find his leverage again. I don't know. It's an interesting thought.
You just mentioned San Fran not being an option. What if something happens with Brock Purdy? What if something he's in negotiations right now with them? Like, what if things go terribly south? I don't know. It is interesting. But
Tua has a jet ski accident or something. I don't know. Like, whatever. Like, there's a million things that could happen between now and then that would change the market drastically for him in a moment. And if he's looking at like, okay, I would play for the Steelers, but that's not the money I want to put my body through this one more time, I think that's a reasonable third choice.
Yeah. And then I would be questioning, like, there's just so much terminology that Aaron brings himself. Like, obviously learning a new offense as well. Like, I would be questioning how quickly it could all get down, not only for Aaron himself, but also his teammates in terms of learning him.
Yeah, I think at that point that you start to have legitimate concerns about the timing.
Yeah.
So long as it's signed by like May, I don't think there's a problem. After that, I don't know.
Gets hairy. Anyways, we will see what Thursday's Aaron Rodgers conversation, how different it can be from Wednesday's Aaron Rodgers conversation tomorrow. But until then,
and the next day,
you know what? I have to steal Chris's bit and just start playing that on the show. Nah, I can't do that. That's his thing. Anyways, Alan, until Thursday's Aaron Rodgers conversation, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now, the site's account, SteelersNow.com. And like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications on the YouTube channel at 15,300 and Chad Scott subscribers. Boy.
Ooh. Okay. You know what? Shout out James Conner.
All right.
Great dude.
Great dude.
And still has been brought up since leaving. So we'll bring him up one more time right here, right now. Anyways, if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, search Steelers Afternoon Drive, leave us a 5-star review, subscribe over there, hit us in the comments, wherever, with your thoughts on the show. Drop some questions for us as we work through the offseason here, all that good stuff. And then find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.